A
How could you do
millionaire
this to
husband,
us?
a pregnant wife, and a hospital corridor that would change
It's
everything.
not what you
It
think.
happened in a flash, an open palm, a sharp crack, and the stunned silence of doctors and nurses frozen mid-step. 7 months along, Emily Carter never imagined the man who once promised to protect her would humiliate her in public. But that day, the mask slipped and the truth stood exposed under harsh fluorescent lights. What would you do if the person you trusted most showed you exactly who they were when it was almost too late? This is the moment Emily's life split in two. Watch closely, listen carefully, and tell me in the comments, what choice would you have made? And if you believe stories like this should be heard, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It keeps these voices alive. The announcement crackled over the Dallas Medical Center intercom, calling a doctor to the maternity ward. Emily sat alone in the sterile waiting area, one hand resting protectively on her belly, the other scrolling her phone, checking the time again. Nathan Brooks was late, again. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the quiet hum of machines. She heard the click of polished shoes on tile, then his voice, cool, impatient. "You making a scene, Emily?" he muttered, leaning too close. The scent on him wasn't hers. She asked where he'd been. He smiled without warmth, gave no answer. And then, without warning, his hand struck her cheek so hard the sound seemed to echo down the corridor. Gasps rose from nearby nurses. A doctor stepped forward, commanding him to back away. Emily's face burned, but her voice was steady. "Don't you dare blame this on the baby," she said, as the world around them held its breath. Somewhere down the hall, a security guard had already reached for his phone. Emily sat on the edge of the hospital bed, her palm pressed to the spot where his hand had landed, the sting still lingering beneath her skin. "Dr. Patel wrapped the blood pressure cuff around her arm, his brow tightening as the numbers flashed on the monitor. "This kind of stress isn't good for you, or the baby," he said quietly. Nathan was gone for now, but his presence clung to the air like a shadow that refused to move. She stared at the white roses on the bedside table, their petals trembling faintly from the air vent above, as if they too felt the weight in the room. Out at the nurse's station, Luis Hernandez glanced toward her door. His jaw was set. He had seen that look on a woman's face before, and it didn't go away without help. He reached into his wallet, slid out a worn business card, and dialed. "Mr. Carter," he said when the deep voice answered. "It's Luis. I'm at Dallas Medical. You need to come." There was a pause, heavy and deliberate. "Is she safe?" "For now," Luis replied. "But I've seen this before. It's not the first time." Emily's phone buzzed in her lap. Her father's name lit the screen. She hesitated, then answered. "Daddy?" The steel in Charles Carter's voice was unmistakable. "Sweetheart, are you all right? Is Grace all right?" Her throat tightened. "We're okay. You're coming to stay with me. I'm sending a car right now." She opened her mouth to protest, but he cut in, low and firm. "Let me worry about Nathan. You just focus on you and that baby." The line went silent, but the echo of his words filled the room, pushing back the haze that had settled over her for months. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt something shift inside her, something that looked a lot like the beginning of a way out. 40 minutes later, the door opened and Nathan stepped inside as if nothing in the world had shifted. He carried a long white box, the scent of roses spilling into the sterile air. His smile was polished smooth, the kind he wore at galas and business deals. Emily sat up straighter in the bed, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. "I brought your favorites," he said, setting the box on the table. "I know I lost my temper earlier. The stress of the baby, the business, it all piled up. You know I would never hurt you on purpose." His voice was honey over stone. Emily's eyes moved from his face to the roses. Once they had been symbols of apology, she was desperate to believe. Now they were just reminders of the cycle she had been living in. She touched one of the petals lightly, then let her hand fall away. "You should leave, Nathan." His expression flickered almost imperceptibly. "What did you tell them?" "Emily, you know, stress like this isn't good for the baby." I told him the truth. Then my husband hit me in a hospital corridor because I asked where he was last night. The smile was gone, now replaced by a tight line across his mouth. One moment of frustration doesn't erase 15 years of marriage. Think about what you're doing. I am thinking clearly for the first time in years. You can't just walk away from our life together, from everything I've built for us. She let her gaze travel over the tailored suit, the gold watch, the silk tie. What you built using my father's connections, my trust fund, while telling me we couldn't afford groceries. That isn't building, Nathan. That's taking. He stepped closer, his hands tightening in a fist, then loosening again. That's not how business works, and you know it. I don't know how business works, because you made sure I never understood our finances. That changes now. The air between them felt charged like the seconds before a storm breaks. Nathan studied her face, searching for the weakness he always counted on. He didn't find it. Fine, he said at last, his tone gone cold. But when you come crawling back, don't expect me to forget this betrayal. Emily didn't look away. I won't be crawling anywhere. Emily sat back against the pillows, her pulse slowing. Outside, she could hear the quiet murmur of hospital life, continuing on as if nothing had happened. High above the Dallas skyline, the glass walls of Carter Holdings glinted in the late afternoon sun. Inside the corner office, Charles Carter stood with his back to the view, his hands clasped behind him. The phone call from Luis still echoed in his ears. Helen Morgan, his head of legal affairs, stepped through the door without knocking, a thick leather folder under her arm. "You wanted to see me," she said. Helen set the folder down and began laying out documents across the polished mahogany. "He's been using Carter Holdings contracts as collateral for personal loans," she said. Loans he never disclosed to Emily. "How much?" Charles asked without looking up. $2.4 million, she replied. He studied the numbers for a moment, the muscle in his jaw tightening. "Termination clauses, moral turpitude," Helen confirmed. "Domestic violence against a pregnant woman qualifies. We can terminate immediately with 30 days' notice." "Do it," Charles said. "All subsidiaries, all divisions. Pull everything at once." The office door opened again, and Jack Reynolds walked in, trench coat still on from the field. The former federal agent placed a slim envelope on the desk. "You want to see this?" Inside were photographs, grainy but clear enough. Nathan and a younger woman entering a luxury apartment building in Austin. Same woman dining with him at a rooftop restaurant. Bank transfers to an account in her name. Offshore statements, Cayman Islands. Charles's eyes were cold now. Name: Sophia Alvarez. Marketing consultant for Brooks Development. He's been paying her rent for 8 months. Helen's pen scratched across her legal pad as Jack continued. He's also been moving assets out of joint accounts for over a year. Real estate purchased under shell companies, cash wired to offshore trusts. Charles tapped the photographs into a neat stack and slid them back across the desk. "Make sure Emily is protected. Freeze every joint account by morning. I want him to wake up and realize the tap is dry." Helen nodded, already dialing as she left the room. Jack waited. "Anything else you want me to dig for?" "Everything," Charles said. "I want the truth in my hands before the week is out." When the door closed, Charles stood alone in the quiet. On the wall hung a portrait of his late wife, her eyes seeming to meet his with the same unspoken question. He picked up the phone again and called downstairs. "Have the car ready in 10 minutes. We're going to the hospital." The sun had dipped lower by the time he stepped into the elevator, but his mind was sharp and steady. Nathan Brooks had crossed a line he could never uncross, and Charles Carter was about to show him exactly what that meant. Before dawn the next morning, the lights on the 45th floor of Carter Holdings were already burning. Helen Morgan sat at the head of the long conference table, her laptop open as emails queued up for dispatch. One by one, she read the termination notices aloud before hitting send. Richardson Steel terminated, effective immediately. Meridian Logistics terminated. Carter Properties terminated. Each click was a silent blow to Nathan Brooks's empire. Across from her, Charles Carter reviewed the freeze orders. By noon, every joint account would be locked. Every credit line Nathan had leaned on for years would vanish. "I want confirmation from every bank," Charles said, not lifting his eyes from the paperwork. Helen answered with a curt, "Already in motion." At 8:15 a.m., a secure courier delivered thick envelopes to the legal departments of half a dozen corporations. Within the hour, phones in Nathan's office began ringing. His assistant fielded calls from suppliers confused about sudden contract cancellations. At 9:03, his personal banker tried to reach him twice before sending a terse email. Mr. Brooks, there is an urgent matter with your accounts. Please contact us immediately. Nathan was still in transit from his uptown condo, sipping coffee in the back of his town car, when the first text flashed across his phone. Contract dispute, call me. The second arrived seconds later. All accounts frozen. He frowned, scrolling through the alerts until the realization settled in. Someone had pulled the rug out from under him, and there was only one person with the reach to do it. By the time he stepped into his glass-walled office, the city skyline no longer looked like a promise. It looked like a countdown. His assistant hurried in a stack of messages in her hands. Vendors, lenders, even the leasing office for his headquarters. All of them had heard the news. In the Carter Holdings war room, Helen slid her phone across the table to Charles. It's starting, she said. Back in his office, Nathan dialed a number he hadn't used in months. The line rang once, then cut to voicemail. He tried another, and another. Doors that had always opened now stayed shut. His reflection in the window looked smaller than he remembered. By mid-afternoon, the damage was no longer a slow leak. It was a flood. Loans secured against Carter contracts were now in default. Interest penalties began piling up. The liquidity he boasted about at dinner parties was gone, replaced by a tightening noose of obligations he couldn't meet. In the Carter building, Charles stood at the window, hands clasped loosely behind him. Dallas stretched out under a pale winter sky.
It's not what you think.
Somewhere across the city, Nathan Brooks was watching his kingdom crumble piece by piece and learning that some mistakes cannot be bought back. By late afternoon, Jack Reynolds was back in Charles Carter's office, a slim black folder tucked under his arm. He didn't bother sitting before laying it open on the desk. The first photo showed Nathan Brooks stepping out of a high-rise in Austin with a woman half his age, her hand resting on his arm like she owned him. The next was a rooftop dinner, wine glasses catching the city lights. Beneath the images were bank statements, transfers every month to an account in her name. Sophia Alvarez, Jack said, marketing consultant for Brooks Development. He's been paying her rent for 8 months and covering her travel. Charles flipped through the pages without a word, his eyes narrowing at the offshore account numbers. Cayman Islands BVI and one in Zurich. That's not all, Jack continued. He's been moving assets out of joint accounts for over a year. Property in San Diego bought under a shell company, cash wired to a trust managed by his cousin. The total so far is north of $3 million. Helen Morgan walked in halfway through the briefing, setting a second folder beside Jack's. We also traced 2 other women from before Emily. Both show the same pattern. Quick romance, heavy spending, then financial control. He targeted women with family wealth. Charles's jaw tightened. Find them. If they're willing to talk, I want their statements on record. Jack nodded. One of them already agreed to meet. Rachel Moore divorced last year after he cleaned out half her inheritance. She's not surprised he's still at it. Helen tapped the folder. The moral turpitude clauses are ironclad. Between the assault at the hospital and the fraud, we can terminate every remaining contract without risk. Charles leaned back in his chair, studying the skyline. Freeze everything you can today. Real estate holdings, trust accounts, anything tied to Emily's name. I don't want him liquidating a dime before we're done. Out in the city, Nathan sat in a private booth at an upscale bar, nursing a drink and scrolling his phone. Sophia slid into the seat across from him, her expression tight. We need to talk, she said. About what? About you lying to me? I saw the news, Nathan. You told me you were separated. You didn't mention your wife was 7 months pregnant when you took me to Miami. Nathan tried the charm that had saved him before, but her eyes were cold. She slid a small recorder across the table. I've kept everything. Every message, every transfer. If anyone asks, I'm telling the truth. When she walked away, he stared at the recorder as if it were a live grenade. Across town, Jack was already sending Charles a text. She's in. We'll testify. Charles read the message and closed the folder. The net was tightening, and Nathan Brooks didn't even know how little room he had left to move. 2 mornings later, the elevator doors to the Carter penthouse slid open, and Nathan Brooks stepped out looking nothing like the man Emily had married. His suit was rumpled, his tie loose, his eyes red from nights without sleep. Charles stood in the foyer, waiting, calm and unmoving. We need to talk, Nathan said, his voice pitched low, as if trying to reclaim control. You're destroying everything I've worked for. Emily is my wife. That's my child she's carrying. You have no right to interfere. Charles's reply was level. I gained that right the moment you raise your hand to my daughter in a hospital hallway. It was one mistake, Nathan shot back. One moment of frustration. It was 15 years of manipulation, Charles said. And now I know exactly who you are. From the archway, Emily's voice cut through the room. Show him. She walked in wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back, her face calm but unyielding. Charles opened a folder on the coffee table and slid the photographs across. Nathan and Sophia in Austin. Bank statements. Offshore transfers. Property deeds under false names. Emily's gaze stayed on him. Explain which part you lied about first. The woman you called just a colleague? The apartment you furnished with our money? Or the millions you hid while telling me we were broke? Nathan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. When he finally spoke, it was the same tired refrain. You don't understand business, Emily. Everything I did was to protect our future. Our future? She stepped closer. You mean your exit plan? You've been protecting yourself. Nathan reached for her hand, but she stepped back. Stop lying. Stop blaming my pregnancy for the fact that I see you clearly for the first time. His voice hardened. You can't just throw away 15 years. You already did, Emily said, when you chose control over love. Silence filled the room. Finally, Charles spoke. Your choice is simple, Nathan. Cooperate with an amicable divorce or fight and lose everything. Nathan's eyes moved between them, searching for weakness. He found none. This isn't over, he muttered, turning toward the elevator. Emily's reply followed him. It's been over for a long time. I just finally said it out loud. The doors closed, and the quiet that remained felt different this time. Not heavy, not fearful. Emily looked at her father, and for the first time in years, she felt the air in her lungs all the way to the bottom. The winter sun was low over Dallas County Family Court when Emily stepped onto the granite steps, a sea of microphones and cameras surging forward. She wore a plain black coat, her hands resting over the curve of her belly, flanked by Charles and Helen. The cold air bit at her cheeks, but her voice was steady. My name is Emily Carter, she began, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. Financial abuse is real abuse. Emotional manipulation is real abuse. And love, she paused, letting the silence draw tight. Love doesn't hit, doesn't steal, doesn't lie, and doesn't make you smaller. Questions flew from every direction, but she didn't break stride, speaking over them. For 15 years, I believed excuses. I accepted isolation from friends and family. I let someone convince me I was too emotional, too demanding, too much. I'm here so no woman has to believe those lies again. Behind her, Rachel Moore and Linda Hayes stood together, two more faces Nathan had tried to erase. The press recognized them from court filings, the click of camera shutters growing frantic. Rachel stepped forward, her voice low but carrying. He did it to me too, and he'll do it again if no one stops him. Linda added, we're here because she had the courage to say enough. Across town, Nathan watched from his office, the TV casting pale light over his face. Every word landed like a hammer. His phone buzzed with messages from business partners, most now refusing to take his calls. Emily continued, her words clear and measured. If you're living this now, if you feel alone, you're not. There are people who will believe you, help you, stand beside you. Find them. Because silence only protects the abuser. Charles placed a hand on her shoulder as she stepped back from the microphones. Reporters shouted her name, but she turned toward the courthouse doors, the others following. Inside, the marble echoed with the sound of their footsteps, measured, united. For the first time, the fight no longer felt like hers alone. It was a line drawn in the open, a warning Nathan Brooks could not spin or silence. And as Emily crossed the threshold into the courtroom, she knew the story was no longer just about what she had endured. It was about the women beside her, the ones still out there, and the choice to face the truth together. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with the quiet hum of anticipation. Judge Harper took her seat, her gaze sweeping over the counsel tables. On one side sat Emily, calm and composed, flanked by Helen and Charles. On the other, Nathan leaned toward his attorney, his jaw tight, eyes flicking between the judge and the evidence stacked against him. Helen rose first. Your Honor, this case is not about a failed marriage. It is about a deliberate pattern of financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and physical abuse. She gestured to the display screen, where still images from hospital security footage appeared. Nathan's hand raised, Emily's head turned from the blow, nurses frozen mid-step. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The video rolled on, soundless but undeniable. Rachel Moore and Linda Hayes took the stand next, their testimonies weaving a consistent pattern. Charm, isolation, control, theft. Each word chipped away at the image Nathan had built for years. Then Sofia Alvarez entered, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She looked him straight in the eye before telling the court how he'd lied to her, how she'd kept every transfer, every message. When Emily finally testified, her voice never wavered. She spoke of the years she'd been made to doubt her own memory, her own judgment, her own worth. The moment in that hospital hallway wasn't the first time, she said. It was the first time I couldn't pretend anymore. Nathan's attorney tried to frame it as marital tension, stress, misunderstandings. But the weight of the paper trail, the witnesses, and the video left no room for doubt. After a short recess, Judge Harper returned with the decision. Emily would receive 75% of marital assets, full custody of the child, and Nathan was ordered to pay substantial support. Hidden accounts were to be liquidated, properties returned, and penalties imposed for attempted concealment. The gavel struck once, sharp as a gunshot. Nathan's shoulders sagged. Across the room, Emily exhaled slowly, her hand resting on her belly. Justice wasn't just a word anymore. It was real, it was here, and it had a face. Hers. Spring sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the new Grace Foundation for Women's Financial Freedom. Emily stood at the entrance, a satin ribbon stretched before her, her daughter cradled in one arm. Cameras clicked as she spoke, her voice carrying over the gathered crowd. This place, she said, glancing at the sign above the door, is for every woman who's been told she's too much, too emotional, too difficult, for every woman who's been made small so someone else could feel big. She cut the ribbon, applause rising as the doors opened. Inside, rows of desks gleamed under warm lights. Volunteers moved between them, greeting women who had already signed up for legal aid, financial counseling, and job training. Emily walked among them. Grace's tiny hand curled into her shoulder. She stopped to speak with a young mother filling out forms. You're safe here, Emily told her, and you're not alone. Later, in her office overlooking the city, Emily read a letter that had arrived that morning. The handwriting was careful, the words uneven. I left because of you. My daughter and I are free because I heard your story. Emily closed her eyes, letting the weight of it settle. From across the room, Charles watched his daughter with quiet pride. You've built more than a foundation, he said. You've built a way out. Emily smiled, looking down at Grace. She'll grow up knowing love is meant to lift you, not break you. As the afternoon light deepened, she stepped to the balcony. Below, Dallas moved on, cars threading the streets, people hurrying to appointments. But here, in this place, time felt steady. She knew there were more women to reach, more battles to fight. But she wasn't afraid of the work ahead. She pressed a kiss to her daughter's hair and whispered, You are enough. Exactly as you are. Grace stirred, then nestled closer. The city stretched beyond them, alive with untold stories. Somewhere out there, another woman was on the verge of deciding she'd had enough. And when she did, Emily Carter would be ready, doors open, lights on, proof that walking away was only the first step and better days were waiting on the other side.